Hello there, we're going to try something a little bit new by having a regular, not quite a stream, not quite a podcast, but something to keep you up to date on the Machinations projects in particular. I'm Grim, most of you will know me already. I am the diseased mastermind behind Postmortem Studios, my own little production company. I have worked for Steve Jackson Games, Wizards of the Coast, for my sins, and numerous others. These days I mostly work for myself because I can't bear being told what to do. So it's my intellectual property, it's my world, my universe, you're just playing in it. And I'm accompanied today by my good friend, Ed. Ed?
Hey. So, I'm Edward, the Dapper DM, Edward Kopp. My background is actually culinary. I'm a chef by profession, but I've been involved with gaming since what we call gaming started. I am here because Machinations, as some of us say, caught my eye. I became really interested in the work that Grim is doing. So, though he doesn't like being told what to do, I told him we need to do this in a way that he believed me. So, what is this? I think this is a collaboration that is going to make a difference in the kind of work that we do moving forward. I think that Grim and I are two sides of the same coin. I'm dapper, he's sleazy. Between the two of us, we're sexy as hell. So you space freaks better figure out how you're going to join this adventure.
So. All right, I'll set things up then for people, and then you can knock them down with what you're doing. So, I have made a lot of games, I have worked on a lot of games, and I have gotten old. And along the way I realised a few things about myself and about the industry and about how things have changed and are changing and will change. You know, change is the only real constant. But, you know, I look at that original generation of gamers that are now sadly dying out, and a lot of them are leaving us soon because there isn't really a retirement plan in this kind of industry. You work until you drop because it's what you love, but also because that's the only way you can get in the moolah. So, yeah, looking back over all of my work since I've been independent, Machinations, as some of us call it, is a project that weirdly has ended up meaning a lot to me, and which has had some of the best reach of the many projects that I've done. But I suck at marketing, and I also don't have much follow through. When I'm done with a project, I'm done with a project, and I want to move on to the new shiny thing that has caught my attention, or the new shiny idea for a mechanic or a world or whatever. So you tend to get a complete game from me, but then that's it, because I get bored with the old toy and I move on to the new one. Machinations has been around long enough that I'm not bored with it anymore. I am interested in seeing what can be done with it. Not a new edition, perhaps, but maybe a soft reboot, you know, some better editing, some innovations and ideas from the intervening, 12 years since I put it out. All of that kind of thing. Give it a fresh coat of paint. But part of that is this kind of soft reboot and soft relaunch in partnership with Ed and some other people, because I don't have the follow through and because I don't have the marketing skills. It's good to hand those off to someone else, and then they can support, at least to start with, at least one of my games in a way that should be more sustainable and create more interest and playability for everybody out there. So that's a very brief and incomplete sort of sketch of what we're trying to do.
Interesting. You brought up the word sustainable, because as a chef, as someone in the hospitality industry who has to worry about things like waste and where cost of sales and margins are pennies, that sustainability in this industry is part of what also has inspired me for this project. I look back, so I have a degree in culinary management, right? So that means I have a business degree. And I stepped away from the hobby in 2010. My background as a chef, and I also spent a lot of time in front of the house. I'm certified executive chef. I'm a certified sommelier. I'm a certified cannabis chef. I also have certifications in sustainability. And all of these concepts, all of these ways of thinking integrated into decades of gaming made me look at our industry and say, how can I come back and be, as weirdly ludicrous as it may sound, but a positive force for change. And that idea of, as we've discussed many times, as we age, as we talk about our morning regimes of various little strange shaped things that we have to consume every morning to keep ourselves moving forward through the day. Well, if you spend a lifetime at sea, in both the United States and in England, there's old sailor homes. Mm-hmm. When I first started looking at getting serious about my culinary degree, getting serious about what were really the long-term goals, my longest term goal was to create what's called a continuing care retirement community in the United States. Mm-hmm. Gamers, right? And set it up in a sustainable way. So this idea of creating a foundation of, hey, let's begin small. I don't want to say resurrect because it never died, but let's reinvigorate. Let's create new momentum in what I see as a really innovative, still to this day, there is not a more innovative way of customizing your character at creation. I don't see one. If anybody's got something out there that allows you to choose between 3 and however many penalties you're willing to take to add abilities, special things that your character can do at character creation, please point me in that direction. I don't see it. So yeah, Machinations definitely lit my fire for coming back and being that, force for change. As a chef, man, look, we lead the way. That's what we do. And so I want to lead the way into, I showed up and lo and behold, there was already an old school renaissance. So I'm not looking to create a renaissance. It's time for the Enlightenment.
Yeah, that's an interesting way to think about it. Though here in the UK, we tend to think of the English Renaissance and the Enlightenment as one thing. So your bright idea to start us off was to create a zine. So take us through the plan for the zine.
Well, sure. Let's talk a little bit though about why we came to a zine, because this is part of that bigger issue. So initially, I had approached you about creating kind of this mega adventure arc that would fill in all of the, not all of, but to start to fill in the implied setting. And, me being, the term people seem to like is either neurospicy or the tism. But as we are well aware, once I get that hyper focus going, I start putting out massive volumes of stuff that needs to be, gone through and distilled into its best parts. And what I've been doing is, using AI as an aid, as a tool to address both the ASD, but what was actually what is really the worst, the bigger problem, to be completely honest, is the ADHD. Because there's one part of my brain that wants to do everything perfectly, and there's another part that makes it impossible. And all of a sudden, using AI made them doing possible. I still have to do a lot of work and filtering because it's, especially in the beginning, it's garbage, it's trite, it's just, the least common denominator of quote unquote a creative endeavor. But spending time. So what happened, of course, is now I had all this information. I had all this stuff and I blasted it on you. Of course, I showed you in advance on another project. I hired you. Say, hey, kind of look at it. So you were already prepared for what I do. We saw that, we talked about it, we started the refinement, and of course we were talking about doing what the rest of the industry was doing, because we're part of the industry, so you use the industry standards, and that's crowdsourcing. Now, of course, we started talking about this about a year ago, and in the intervening time, as I did more and more research about how the system works, and I kept asking people to explain to me cost of sales and how do you determine how much you're paying this talent and that, and then nobody was explaining anything that made sense to me as someone with a business degree. What I was hearing is people talking about the industry like it was a gamble, like it was like it was a stock market. So that what I kept being told was, if you have 2,000 subscribers before release, pre-release subscribers, you're 90% likely to fulfill. And if you get to 30% of your total fulfillment within, I think it's like 48 hours, that number goes to 98. And that was the only business model people would quote me. So of course all the stuff went down with, the terrorist regime coming into the White House and blowing up every aspect of any normalcy, because the only toy the guy has is tariffs. Yeah. So immediately, all kinds of stuff started blowing up in the industry. So reevaluate our plan. That's part of the kind of chefing I did along the way, was crisis management for a corporation. Yeah. When things are blowing up, you gotta stop it, you gotta fix it, and you gotta pivot. The pivot that made the most sense is a monthly subscription of a zine. When all of this started with 3rd edition and the SRD, that was really how the model should have worked, with POD, PDFs and POD. But when that early attempt was so crude and so disappointing for the vast majority of people, I don't think the technology was able to support the business model. The business model now of, hey, we're going to show you what we do with a free episode, a free adventure on postmortem.net, not net.
Is it? Post-mort.com.
Thank you. Post-mort.com. It's also available on DriveThruRPG, but make sure you enable what? The adult content I discovered. And yes. Then, look, we're not putting out 5e. Machinations is not your standard fare. This is not McDonald's or Starbucks. You are a gourmand. You appeal to foodies. So that's what we're putting out. We don't expect, I have no expectation of being the most popular thing out there. What I have the expectation of creating a product that people who have like-minded philosophies about TTRPGs, what it means to sit at the table with friends, what it means to cultivate a good story, and that being challenged intellectually, emotionally, these are good things. It's good to feel uncomfortable because you need to learn how to act upon principles and understanding instead of reacting to situations and emotional responses. And I believe that that's what we can begin to do. We can create a product that's going to attract like-minded, grim followers already, because that's the truth. You have attracted a following. I do not attract followings. What I do is find a mission, find a way to complete that mission, and show people the path, and create a system that doesn't need me there. So that's the long-term goal with this zine, is to create an opportunity for people to participate in the Machinations galaxy, to create their own games at home with sandbox toolkits, and at a reasonable price, to be known every month they're going to get 32 to 40 pages of PDF POD content that is worth their time and is worth the $7 or whatever it is.
We haven't quite worked out the production cost yet.
No. But those numbers are numbers. They will come out in the end. That just takes time, and of which neither of us are good at. I'm the marketing guy. I need to find an accountant.
So what are you going to call the zine?
So, you space freaks, it's your monthly, man. Space Freak Monthly. It's going to be put out by Machinations Media. Machinations Media, as we are talking about today with Machinations Monday, is just going to be this development, what do you want to call it? Laboratory. Under your gentle guiding hand as much as possible. And that means, part of what we want to do is create a thriving Discord community. So we'll be setting up a Machinations specific Discord channel through Postmortem, through your Discord. And we want to encourage and develop young creators. Take our experience and pass it on, because that's where we are in this industry, right? It's 50 some years old, and it doesn't have the standards of professionalism like I came from in the culinary world. We have hundreds of years of culinary structure. We had somebody who became the person, Auguste Escoffier. Escoffier created what's called the brigade system, which is how all hotels and big fancy cruise lines and the fanciest of traditional restaurants, that's what they did. Everybody has a very specific job, just like in the military. He was a Navy vet.
Yeah.
Each position supports. Well, again, as we were talking earlier, man, you have to do everything.
Yeah.
This is not how a successful business grows and thrives. If you don't have people that you are training, developing, nurturing, and mentoring to move on to either take your position or get a better job, then what's the point?
Yeah.
Then you're selfish. All you're doing is holding all this knowledge, all this experience, all of this. Look, mentoring in the culinary world is like the most important thing. We need the same thing.
Yeah, I do a lot of mentoring and assisting and stuff like that, just like quietly, privately, and not to my benefit. We're working
yeah, and that's why we're working together now. And the goal is to take that, because that's what works, right? That's one of the reasons you have a following of people who are committed to the work you're doing. You did all of that, and that's what it's like in the culinary world too. There's no, I'm training you to leave. What good does that do me in the long term?
Yeah,
it doesn't.
Like the old,
what it does in the long term, it makes a better community of culinarians.
Yeah, a bit like the old guild and apprenticeship system, in a way.
Exactly. So that that folds into this bigger concept of mine, which is how do we professionalize? And this is this first stage, right? We show that systems like we use in the culinary world are helpful. You learn the fundamental techniques, so then you know how to ad lib.
Yeah.
When we build a structure that allows people to be self-supportive, support each other, and hold each other accountable, because I feel that's another major issue in the industry right now. So we'll touch, because I'm a political person and you are always politically adjacent. My political mantra is integrity, transparency, accountability. If you create a system based on transparency and accountability, it self-selects for people with integrity, because people with integrity don't mind being held accountable. And in the TTRPG community, because that's my I don't know enough about board games and electronic games, but in our community, gamers are the best of us and the worst of us. And every time I say that to someone, I see them nod. They know exactly what I mean. So because back in the early 2000s and forward to when I first started playing, as a GM, I was a gatekeeper. I kept nasty, scroty dudes from hitting on some girl because all of a sudden she was 18 and that was some magic number that made her legal. Dude, you're 40. You're disgusting. You haven't bathed in weeks. And now you become a sexual predator in front of my eyes. Go away.
Yeah.
You are not welcome at my table. That's not what this is about.
See, that's a great example of what you mean by the kind of best and worst of us. I think previously, the gaming community used to be so welcoming that it would let people in who probably shouldn't have been let in. But that was a reflection. But that was a reflection of a good thing about the community.
Right.
But then the downside of that is that you then get these deluded people and nasty people, and they take advantage of everyone else's acceptance and tolerance. And
I just had this conversation the other day with not as long time a gamer friend, but talking about a much longer term gamer friend, one of my original gaming friends. He's passed away when we were 50 due to his gaming related diseases, diet related, but we had, in our original gaming group, there were about a dozen of us. And one of them was just there was something wrong, whether it was reaction to home life or something else. But he was one of those guys that whatever you had done, he had done something just like it, only it was harder. And his life began to be filled with all of these lies to compensate for whatever. And at one point, if your lies are about criminality and violence, you find yourself in a position where you're in front of people where you have to put up and shut up, or shut up. And he put up. He did some really horrid things, and that was the end of it. I walked away from that guy and never looked back. My buddy Scott, he was a gamer to him, and gamer meant friend, and friend meant everything.
Yeah, you can get trapped in situations like that where you end up being someone's only friend, and they don't stop to think why you're their only friend and correct anything. But so going back to the zine, absolutely. What's going to be in it? What's the idea here?
The idea here, so I was inspired by how you run games. I've been playing in your Grim streams on Sundays for a few months now, and I am not an ad-libber. I am very much a method actor. So I get deep into detail so that it's all there, ready to pull out of my brain at any moment when I need it. I wanted to stretch my abilities of how I think about gaming and what skills needed to be exercised, right? So, I was a wrestler growing up. If you want to be a better wrestler, you don't practice with the fish. You practice with the dude that wipes the map with you. You get better by challenging yourself. So this was a challenge for me to think about, instead of how to write these massive, complete arcs, but to make a story, to be able to make a sandbox tool kit that represents aspects of Machinations' game style: sexy, sleazy, swords, sci-fi, gonzo, pulp adventure. So that was my inspiration. And then what I'm hoping is that these products, in essence, will self-select for people who want to be able to do what you do. And that this will be a tool to help them get to that point.
Yeah, so
I'm working very hard on the structure right now.
Yeah, so the way I write and run adventures for my own use is that I have a few ideas for scenes that I might want to incorporate. I have an idea who the villain is, and if there is one, and what they're doing, and I have an idea of where stuff is taking place, and then I pretty much pull the rest out of my ass at the last minute. That's what works for me.
And that's what I noticed. And so with all those little letters at the end of my name, I also want to write for another very specific audience. And that's people with all those little letters at the end of the name. So, part of the goal is to create a format that gives a scaffolding for people to become comfortable enough to start pulling more shit out of their ass. And that starts with random tables, chaos tables. That is part of, okay, well, so if you're not really great at ad-libbing, but now is the moment where we need it, how do I support you? Well, at this moment, roll a d6. Look at the chart. Holy shit! Their eyes are now bleeding and mucus is coming out their ears.
Stuff like that. Random stuff. A bit of a prod. Yeah, I find an interesting side effect of this is, so you get stuck. You're stuck for an idea. You need to improv the next section. Okay, you've got a table. You roll on the table. You read what the table says, and you realize that that's not what you want to do, and then you realize what you do want to do. So, yeah, being presented with something like that can prod you into coming up with your own thing when you couldn't.
Kickstarter, yeah, that's a great point as well. I know, I understand it because I've done that. Where I've read through all the examples and I went, no, none of those So that's part of my goal.
Yeah.
Is so, we're not building something that is a 3-act adventure. Now, I tried to write for the RPGA doing the literal 3-act adventure format back in the late 90s, early 2000s, and I was rejected because I was told that wasn't the RPGA format. And then, of course, now that's what everybody uses. And now that everybody's using it, I found, no, that's actually not the best way to do role-playing game storytellers.
Yeah.
This idea of a toolkit of creating a sandbox where these parts are plug and play, and that they're designed in a way that those random events are very specific to that tiny bit of narrative arc, right? What I like to do is, instead of give people a lot of exposition and set up, I want to just present an issue. Here is something. How do you react? Your reaction will create certain feedback. How do you react to the feedback?
Yeah.
I'm trying to keep that mindset instead of, you must find the hidden code, otherwise the adventure stops here. So, that's part of the format. Another part is filling in who are the 99 princesses? What is the implied setting? What is going on? Why is it going on? And just to give you little tiny bits. And of course, since we're discussing subscription models, the having tiered subscription models to be able to give, participation in design, or added PDFs with these interesting little side lore that isn't necessarily important in the moment for the adventure, but it'll be fun to know, especially if you really get into it, because the goal, as always, from a marketing standpoint, is a sense of ownership. Okay.
Yes.
So the more people feel that they're invested, they're involved. I'll pull in. So my experience with the RPGA was, multitude. In the end, I spent the most of my time with the Living Arcanus convention events, and what made them create the hardcore fan base that they have to this day, nearly 25 years later, is that in that setting, in those adventures, the players' actions had consequences, and they also had influence. And that created a sense of ownership.
Yeah, I should probably take a moment here to explain how Machinations was written. It was kind of a challenge to myself to write something for the old school Renaissance sort of style. So it is broadly compatible with a whole bunch of OSR-based games. But I didn't come into the hobby via D&D, so I never had the same attachment to certain sacred cows and so on that it had. But one thing I did like about a lot of D&D material was how the setting was never usually explicit in the core books. They would later on sell you like Athas or Greyhawk or The Inner World or Planescape or whatever, but in the books themselves, it was all just kind of implied. Who were these mages? Who lent their names to spells? And all of this other stuff like that. So when it came to writing Machinations, I took a similar approach to make the setting implicit. It's a big old galaxy that is absolutely full to the brim with life. There was a galaxy-spanning empire until relatively recently. This was the Erlanth Matriarchy. That collapsed after their empress was assassinated or committed suicide or disappeared, or something happened to her. As far as most people are concerned, it's an assassination. And she has these 99 daughters who all have a claim to the throne. And so the galaxy's dissolved into civil war. Warlords have carved out little areas. But, all of this is implied. It's just in the background. And whenever I use an example of something, or I will fill in a bit of stuff about the galaxy that you could take or leave if you wanted, and almost every page has a little sort of adventure seed or nugget of colour at the bottom as well. So, in a way that I don't think works in fantasy games, and would be one of my critiques about a lot of modern fantasy games, is they have too many races and so on. A fundamental thing upon which Machinations hung was the idea that you could play truly alien aliens, and that you could customize your race or species, whatever you want to call it, to your heart's content, and it would make sense. So we have this vast, old universe in which, if one zine is about one thing and another zine is about another thing entirely, it's a big galaxy. There's room for everyone's individual games, and they don't have to cross over. But we can give people that buy-in where they create something and then it gets shared with somebody else.
Yeah. And so the concept of what I'm doing now is, so with the zine, I'm creating 3-month cycles. And the first cycle is going to be a high-level introduction to various princesses and how they interact. And then the second cycle, we're going to go to the other direction, and we're going to go to the lowest levels of society and culture and explore that. And then by that time, that's going to take us 6 months in, and my hope is that we will have developed a strong, thriving community on Discord who wants to be involved, and then we will begin using that buy-in, that sense of ownership, to start directing our creative endeavors and hopefully recruiting and developing new talent. So one of the things that I was really became very how to explain this. So one of the issues that I've seen in the gaming community obviously are cultural clashes, and the cultural clashes don't necessarily have to do with a specific game system. They are almost always focused around a specific personality. So look, it's so weird. I love being in a well-regulated, structured process for my professional life, because in my real world, I struggle so much to do that to myself. And I think that this lack of professionalism at all levels has caused people to decide that when my feelings are hurt, when something makes me uncomfortable, right? This is the equivalent for me as a chef as when people call and tell me that I caused them food poisoning. And that what I discovered over the years is that because there's this conversation. All right, well, what do you mean? What happened? So, because I need to know this information, right? And 9 times out of 10, what happens is somebody has eaten something else somewhere else, but I'm the last thing they ate. So I'm the cause, right? This is part of this act upon principle and understanding instead of reacting. Because what science tells us is that if you're going to get food poisoning from what I eat, it's going to either happen now or it's going to happen in 24 hours. Yeah. Pretty much. That's pretty standard.
But they think it's the Moules Marinier that you served them and not the Subway pole they licked 8 hours previous to that.
Correct. Or that they, how fastidiously they wash their hands, etc. There's all kinds of things going on. So what I learned is a number of interesting things. One, the customer is not always right. Food safety law is not based upon science, but rather on a litigious community. Right? In the U.S., we sue for everything. You ate something, it made you poopy, so you sued somebody. That's America. All right, so how does this apply to games? Well, look, man, this is imaginary. This is in our heads. You're not going to poop yourself. You're not going to have anaphylactic shock if someone says something offensive. If someone, and this is the one, it comes up constantly, so to me it's the dumbest one of all, spiders. Get fucking over yourself. You are Homo sapien. You are the top of the food chain. Fucking step on it. Kill it. Be a predator. I just, man, that kind of stuff kills me. So, part of what we're doing is we're leaning into that. All right? I'm creating a way for people to look at this adventure and know how sleazy it is, how filthy it is, how much cheesecake is going to be in the art, and how uncomfortable the eroticism is going to be.
Yeah.
But you're going to know. We're going to tell you up front, but it's going to be there.
Yeah.
Because so what? So 90% of the people don't want it. I don't care. When I moved to the city, I moved to sell very expensive bottles of wine to very wealthy people, or the connoisseurs. I only care about the people who like and care about the kind of product you already put out, and I want to develop that market and let them know they are seen, appreciated, and we are here for them. Because there's no reason to have to be uncomfortable to explore emotional or even political realities, so long as they are part of a game, of a mechanic, and everybody involved is aware.
Yes. I mean, part of the original inspiration for Machinations was, of course, obviously, Metal Hurlant, or as known elsewhere, Heavy Metal magazine, as well as the British science fiction comic 2000 AD that I grew up watching, and other things like Masamune Shiro's Intron Depot and other examples like that. I grew up reading Mad Magazine and the Freak Brothers and all kinds of weird, far out, quasi hippie shit, because my dad's side of the family were weird, far out, quasi hippie people. Yeah, so I guess in some ways it's a throwback, but you have to realize that back in the day these things were considered, progressive. And to my mind, that's some ground that we had taken that we've since lost. And, if you don't like cheesecake or implied sexuality or weird gross out stuff or drug references or whatever, I mean, you don't have to buy it. I'm not going to be like some of these companies that get awfully precious and say you can't play my game. You can play my game, you can do whatever you want with it, but if you buy it and you don't like it, that's fine. You don't have to make it everyone else's problem.
I have bought many a bottle of wine and went, whatever. No, not my thing. I won't buy it again. That's how you learn what your tastes are. So go back to my culinary foundation. I was taught a couple interesting things. One, that your sense of taste is related to your sense of smell. So I smelled everything before I ate it. And I had to taste everything before I could say, no, I didn't like it. So I still do that to this day. I continue to taste things that I know I don't like just to see, why don't I like it still? Do I still? Because it'll change. Cauliflower. Hated cauliflower as a kid. Now, whatever. I can eat cauliflower. No big deal. Same thing. So when I started playing, though, as we discussed well over a year ago, your first introduction was the Choose Your Own Adventure and MERP. For me, it was the blue box or the blue cover, and then immediately AD&D, supported by every other role-playing game that came out between 1980 and 1985 when I graduated high school, and we started splitting up, and then we would just get together and play D&D because it was the quickest, easiest thing. But my taste, my palate has been developed from years of exposure to different things. When I traveled overseas, I tasted every cuisine, every street food, because I discovered along the way, I understand the American palate better than lots of people. When I come across something and eat or drink it somewhere in a weird corner of the world and go, oh, this is good, this is going to sell back in Peoria. It's going to happen. This is the same thing. I can feel that this is going to be very copacetic with the palate of Midwestern gamers. And that's the strength of the gaming community right there. That's ground zero from Wisconsin to Ohio. You just make that loop right around, all those states that touch. That's it. That's who you need to sell gaming to. That's your market. Trying to hit the coast. Now I can move Machinations in. I can get it to pick up here in Brooklyn because it's Brooklyn, But I don't think some of the other, shall we say, more refined group here in Brooklyn who have a tendency to put out live action games on YouTube, it's not for them, and it's not for their community. So, I encourage everybody, download the first one for free, see what you think, and, the other thing I'll tell you is it usually takes 3 exposures to something before you're able to develop a taste and a palate for it.
Yeah.
Right? And so that's another kind of barrier to success, is allowing people to experience what we're doing and decide if it's for them. But we'll do it.
Yeah.
Right?
So being optimistic, we hope to have, we have a quick start and an adventure out already for free, which you can get at post-mort.com. It should still be on the front page when you listen to this. When are we hoping to have the first zine out and subscriptions available?
So issue 1 will be ready for download on the first Friday of every month starting in August, and that'll be August 1st this year. The subscription model itself, so that'll be, we'll have a conversation, because I was looking at, of course, Patreon and Substack. So we will finalize those details. As I told you, I have a meeting with some of my business mentors to help me understand how to do non-culinary business.
Yeah.
And what I'll do is we'll make sure we announce this loud and clear by the end of the week.
Groovy, because there are different ways that it could be gone about, and we have discussed others previously. So it's just really about picking one or more at this point.
Or more. I'm looking at, I'm a firm believer in multiple streams of income. So, there are various locations that I'm learning. I'd never heard of IOItch. I had no idea what that was until about a month ago. So apparently that's an avenue as
Yeah.
well. I think in the short term, our best marketing is really, it's going to be word of mouth. It's going to be people who really are enthusiastic and want to see continued growth to organize a table or two at a local convention. That's honestly the best marketing in the world.
Yeah.
And that's part of how do we professionalize, right? Because in the end, we want to make sure as a brand, Machinations Media, as Postmortem, that you are being represented in a way that you're comfortable with. And that's part of the ongoing project overall. As I started talking about culinary professionalization and the TTRPG industry professionalization, that's all going to have to roll in. And that's part of the bigger picture that we're exploring along the way. But I try not to dive too deep into that because, it's not gaming, it's business. And that's not what we're here to talk about.
Yeah. So I think that'll do for now. If you want us to talk about any aspects of the business or the forthcoming zine or Machinations of the Space Princess as a whole, let us know in the comments or elsewhere. Everything you need to find us should be down below or in the show notes or somewhere. And we'll see you Space Freaks next time.
Stay sleazy, Space Freaks. All right, man.